Hello everybody, this is Refresh and I am here to bring you a battle between these two War of the Spark sealed decks and the Defeat a God challenge deck from Journey into Nyx. On the left we have the Gruul deck, on the right we have the Rakdos deck, and in the description box below you'll see links to their pack openings and deck buildings if you're curious about what's in them. We'll be playing with 3 hero cards, the Harvester, the Explorer, and the Vanquisher. The Harvester says tap, draw a card, and then discard a card. The Explorer says you may play an additional land on each of your turns. And the Vanquisher says your starting hand size is increased by 1, your maximum hand size is increased by 1. Because I only have one of each of these cards, we'll be applying them to both decks simultaneously. We'll be playing 2 games, first on regular difficulty with 3 Rollicking Throngs, and then on hard mode with 4 Rollicking Throngs. We'll begin with 8 cards apiece. Gruul draws a Forest, Primordial Worm, Jaya's Greeting, Mountain, Raging Crunch, Mountain, Centaur Nurturer, and Chandra's Pyrohelix. I think this is an okay start, so we'll keep this. Rakdos draws an Honor the God Pharaoh, Herald of the Dreadhorde Twins, Swamp, Mountain, Jaya's Greeting, and Tidebearer Giant. I think this is also okay, we will keep this as well. Turn 1, we will play a Forest and a Mountain over here, and a Swamp and a Mountain over here, and both then we'll cast the Jaya's Greeting, targeting a Rollicking Throng, dealing 3 damage to it and scrying. This will kill 1 Rollicking Throng, and we will scry over here. We'll put the Massacre Girl on the bottom, and we'll cast another Jaya's Greeting over here, targeting another Rollicking Throng, killing that. And then we'll scry 1. We'll keep the Forest right on top there. And then we will pass to Xenagos, who will cast the top 2 cards. The first one being Xenagos' Scorn. Xenagos Ascended gains trample until end of turn and attacks this turn if able. And then the second one being an Ecstatic Piper. When Ecstatic Piper enters the battlefield, Xenagos Ascended attacks this turn if able. Well, he's going to attack. So he's attacking and will take 6 damage to go to 14. And then at the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Gruul will draw a Forest, and we will discard the Chandra's Pyrohelix. Rakdos will draw a Mountain, and we will discard the Honor the God Pharaoh, and then we'll untap. Then we'll draw. Gruul draws a Giant Growth. Rakdos draws a Swamp. We'll play a Mountain and a Swamp over here. We'll tap them both, and we will play Herald of the Dreadhorde. Over here, we will play a Mountain and a Forest, and we will tap all of them to play a Centaur Nurturer. When it enters the battlefield, we'll gain 3 life to go up to 17. It is a 2/4 Centaur Druid. That's one of its abilities, and we can tap it for 1 mana. The Herald of the Dreadhorde is a 3/2 zombie warrior. When Herald of the Dreadhorde dies, amass 2. And then we will pass the turn to Xenagos, who will untap, and then cast the top 2 cards. The first one being Ripped to Pieces. At the beginning of combat, this turn, each Reveler deals 1 damage to each player and each creature those players control. And then the second one being a Wild Mayonnaise. This is a 3/1 Human Reveler with First Strike. And then each creature will be dealt 3 damage, killing the Herald of the Dreadhorde. And we will be taking 3 damage per player for 6 damage, taking us down to 11. When the Herald dies, we will get a zombie army with 2 +1/+1 counters from the Amass ability. And the Centaur Nurturer survives. At the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester, and Gruul will draw a Mountain and discard the Giant Growth. Rakdos will draw a Swamp, and we will discard the Swamp. And then we will untap. And then we'll draw. Gruul draws a Mountain, and Rakdos draws a Burning Prophet. We'll play the Swamp over here, and we'll play both of the Mountains over here. We'll tap all of these guys over here to play a Primordial Worm. And then we will tap 4 mana over here to play the Dreadhorde Twins. It is a 2/2 Zombie Jackal Warrior. When it enters the battlefield, amass 2. That'll make this a 4/4. And then we will attack the Ecstatic Piper with the Centaur Nurturer and the Wild Mayonnaise with the Zombie Army, killing them both. And then each player will gain 2 life from the Satyr Reveler leaving the battlefield, and each player will gain 3 life from the Wild Mayonnaise leaving the battlefield for a total of 10 life, taking us up to 27. And then we'll pass the turn to Xenagos, who will cast the top 2 cards. The first one being Xenagos' Strike, deals 4 damage to each player. That's 8 damage coming our way. And then Ecstatic Piper, which causes Xenagos to attack. So we'll take 8 damage for us to go to 19. And then the Ecstatic Piper will cause Xenagos to attack. We'll actually take the hit this time and go down to 13. At the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Gruul will draw an Invading Manticore and discard the Raging Crunch. Rakdos will draw a Widespread Brutality, and we will discard the Burning Prophet. And then we'll untap. And then we'll draw. Gruul draws a Forest, and Rakdos draws an Ingrath's Rampage. I think we have the win now, so what we're going to do is we're going to attack the Rollicking Throng with the Primordial Worm and the Ecstatic Piper with the Zombie Army, killing them both. We'll gain 4 life from the dying Ecstatic Piper, taking us up to 17. And then over here, we're going to cast the Ingrath's Rampage and force Xenagos to sacrifice a creature. And Xenagos only has 1 creature himself. He dies, and the War of the Spark sealed decks defeat Xenagos. We'll be right back with hard mode. Alright, we are set up for hard mode, and at 20 life, we're going to start with 8 cards apiece and hope we don't draw terribly. Gruul draws a Centaur Nurturer, a Chain Whip Cyclops, Raging Crunch, Forest, Snare Spinner, Giant Growth, Mountain, and Forest. I think this is an acceptable first hand, so we will keep it. Rakdos draws an Ob Nixilis' Cruelty, Mountain, Ingrath's Rampage, Spellgorger Weird, Bond of Revival, Swamp, Swamp, and Swamp. I think this is also just an acceptable hand, but we will keep that. We'll start the game with a Mountain and a Forest over here. We'll tap them both and play the Snare Spinner. And over here we'll play the Mountain and the Swamp, and we will hold off on casting anything over there. We will go to Xenagos, who will cast the top 2 cards. The first one being a Ferrous Band Revelers. It's a 4/4, and when it leaves the battlefield, each player draws a card, and then also a Ecstatic Piper, which causes Xenagos to attack. We will take 6 and go to 14. At the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Gruul will draw a Spellgorger Weird, and we will discard the Giant Growth. And then Rakdos will draw a Nahiri Storm of Stone, and we will discard the Bond of Revival. And then we will untap. We'll draw. Gruul draws a Forest, and we'll play both of these Forests. Rakdos draws a Spellgorger Weird. We'll play both of these Swamps. And then we will spend 3 mana and cast 1 Spellgorger Weird. And over here we will spend all 4 mana and cast the Centaur Nurturer, which will get us 3 life from its Enter the Battlefield ability. And then we will pass the turn to Xenagos, who will untap and cast the top 2 cards. The first one being an Ecstatic Piper, so he's going to come attacking again. And the second one being Dance of Flame. As long as 5 or more Revelers are on the battlefield, all Revelers have haste and attack each turn if able. Yikes! Okay, we're being attacked by every single Reveler and Xenagos. This is really terrifying. We'll block one of the Ecstatic Pipers with that. We will block another Ecstatic Piper with that. We'll block one of the Rollicking Throngs with this, and we are taking 13 damage to go to 4. This Ecstatic Piper will die and give us 4 life, taking us back up to 7. Everything else bounces. And then we will use the Harvester at the end of our turn to draw a Jaya Venerated Fire Mage, and we will discard the Chain Whip Cyclops. Rakdos will draw a Tithe Bearer Giant, and we will discard the Tithe Bearer Giant. Alright, we'll untap, and we will draw. Gruul will draw a Chandra's Pyrohelix, and Rakdos will draw a Dusk Mantle Operative. We're not in a great place because we're not drawing the cards that we need, but I guess that's life sometimes. Alright, we will tap 5 over here to cast Jaya Venerated Fire Mage. She is a 5 loyalty Planeswalker, and if another red source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals that much damage plus 1 to that permanent or player instead. We can also -2 her to deal 2 damage to any target. We'll -2 her immediately to kill off this Ecstatic Piper, getting us 4 more life, taking us up to 11. And then we will cast the Ob Nixilis' Cruelty over here, which will -5/-5 the Ferrous Band Revelers, exiling it. And because it left the battlefield, we'll draw a card each. Gruul draws a Mountain, we'll play the Mountain. Rakdos draws a Jaya's Greeting, which we can't do anything with just yet. Because we cast a non-creature spell, the Spellgorger Weird will get a +1/+1 counter. And then we will attack with the Spellgorger Weird into one of the Rollicking Throngs to clear out the board as well. And that is not the worst turn in the world. We'll pass to Xenagos, who will untap. And he will cast the top 2 cards, the first one being Impulsive Return. Return 2 cards named Ecstatic Piper from Xenagos' graveyard to the battlefield. At the beginning of combat this turn, Impulsive Return deals damage to each player equal to the number of Revelers on the battlefield. There do happen to be 2 Ecstatic Pipers to return to the battlefield. And then he'll cast the second card, which is another Ecstatic Piper. We're going to be taking a total of 12 damage from the assembled Ecstatic Pipers, finishing us off very quickly. And that is the end of that. Well, we didn't really get there this time, but Xenagos is one of the harder of the challenge decks, and we definitely didn't have the greatest starting hands, and we got pinched on mana really hard early on. Anyway, that is these battles against the Defeated God challenge deck. Let me know what your thoughts are about the games in the comments below. If I made any rules or gameplay errors, let me know so that I may learn from your wisdom. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you'd like to see more such videos, hit subscribe. This was Refresh. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.